Hello and good evening, everybody. We are Matthew and Jennifer Oxford, certified Optavia coaches, and Jen is also a clinical mental health counselor. We are here for week 4 of the stages of change. Is that? Yeah. Week 4, stages of change. We're off a night too, so that's okay. So yes, we're gonna go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, so we have talked about pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and now we're going to talk about what it looks like to be in action successfully, right? And so as we go through tonight, we're going to talk about what that looks like. What are some of the barriers to being successfully in action versus jumping out of it? Because the stages of change is a cycle in which we enter different cycles and we go up and down in stages. It's not just a linear process. So talk about that. I want to start by reviewing a little bit from last week. We had to end, but there are some things that we talked about in preparation that are going to be really important as we talk about the action stage. And the first one is that you are willing to take small steps and explore your options, right? Be open-minded and curious, that you're giving reassurance to yourself through those small options. We're going to talk about more about that later. And that you're having and experiencing examples of successful change. The second one is that you're going to go public. Even those of you who are private people, you need to have at least one other person that is part of your support system. And you'll find as you get successful that it's a little bit easier to grow that support system. But the part of your accountability is to verbalize your goal to your coach and work with your community to get this. We're not meant to grow alone and change alone. We're meant to do it together. The third is envisioning. So you should be able to look at what success looks like. You can use a vision board and develop a relationship with your future self. That's probably been one of my favorite parts of this process, is starting to ask myself what the future me needs today and making decisions based on that rather than just comforting my present self. And then the fourth is you need to work on improving your self-efficacy. That's how you feel about yourself and your confidence. That comes through hope and optimism. Being willing and choosing to hope again is a big part of that. Expecting that difficult situations will come, but that you're going to be able to handle it. And look for ways to find success in all the steps that you're taking. And as you do that, you're going to be prepared to move into this action phase. All right, so I want to talk about this slide a little bit. It's the one with the graphics on it, right? That's going to pull it down for just a minute. But part of this means that we have gone through these stages where we haven't really been in action. We've been testing things out. And as you've tested it out, you've said, okay, I think I'm ready. Now, if you've jumped too fast and you're saying, oh, I'm ready for action. Some of you may or may not have even skipped, previous webinars and you don't know what I'm talking about. But action means that you've gone through the other 3 stages of change, which means you're more than halfway to your change. If you've successfully gone through pre-contemplation, contemplation, and preparation, then you're more than halfway there, because action is taking all the things you've done with your mind and being a healthy mind and starting to take all of that and use it to develop it. So some of us start changing behaviors, and that's a little bit different than being in the action state. The action state is an actual phase of change, and it's not just where we want to change. It's not even just that we are doing something different all the time, but it is this attitude of, I am now changing my life. And I'll be really honest, when we started our transformation, I started using tools before I knew I was changing my life. In fact, I probably felt, I felt really scared about the idea of changing my life. And so that was a big fear of mine. In fact, when people would find out that I was working on weight loss, they'd be like, oh, it's going to change your life. And I would go to Matt and I would say, Matt, someone said the meanest thing to me. They said, this is going to change my life. And I know that sounds stupid, but I was really scared of that process because I wasn't in action yet, even though I was acting. And so understand that this is a cognitive state, not just a behavioral thing. So as we talk about this, action is about a stage of change, and we're still dealing with mindset, even though you're going to see behaviors. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that lead to motivation. I'm going to share this screen. Okay, so I added this. So during the process of action, you're going to need motivation. One of the very first things that we do in our health program is we identify our why. Most of you, if you've been with us for a while, know that my why is about being a mom and being able to get pregnant and successfully carry a pregnancy. And so there are days, right, where I don't want to do everything I should do. But I go back to that motivation, things that get me excited, right? Exercise doesn't excite me, but the idea that I'm going to control my life does. And so things that excite you, you're going to be a little nervous. Nervous is not a bad feeling. Nervous is an awareness that you are pushing yourself beyond what you're currently capable, not capable, but you're currently willing to do. And that's great because that's where change happens outside the comfort zone. So if you're a little nervous, that's okay. Determined, right? Your why should make you super laser focused, right? There's a lot of things that can get in my way, but when I know I want something, then I'm going to be able to move forward. You should feel positive, right? We've done a lot of mind work around the fear of failure. And at this point, when you're in action, you feel positive, like I can change. When Matt and I first started a goal, neither of us could identify what would have been a SMART goal. So if you look up SMART goals, one of the things they say is it's measurable, right? That's the M. Matt and I did not have a measurable goal. Matt had a fake measurable goal of 40 pounds, right? Because he didn't think he could do any more. That's not what we mean by measurable. But by positive, right? Once I had done my program and realized, oh my gosh, I can be successful. I remember working with a client and she set a goal for herself and I heard that goal and I thought, I can do that. It was over 100 pounds, maybe even over 150 pounds away at that point. But I thought I can do that. And that was that attitude of action, right? And then hopeful, that you feel hope enough to continue to move forward. Hopelessness is a very debilitating experience. And so if you ever feel like you're losing hopefulness towards your motivation, we're going to talk a little bit about the scarcity mindset that might lead to that tonight. But I want you, that's when you tie into your coach in your community and you see other people being successful, other people doing things that you could never do. I had a really sweet girl come up to me at work today. Well, you know, it was funny because I was on the way to the bathroom and she goes, Jen, come here. And it was actually a coworker. I say girl, but it's just because she's, you know, more than 10 years younger than me. But she said, come here. I said, what? What's up? She said, I just want you to know that the only reason I get on Facebook now is to look at your posts because they are so uplifting and inspiring. And that comes from seeing other people be successful. And so I want you to know that if you are seeing other people's success, that's going to build positivity, right? I am really excited that some people look at me and they say, I've known Jen ever since she was, I started gaining weight at 9. Ever since she was 9 or older, and she's always been overweight. So if Jen can do this, I can do this. Yes, that is what I want you to think. When you see me, I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, Jen did this thing and no one else can do it. I want you to think Jen was overweight for over 30 years and she found tools that helped her control her life. And it wasn't willpower. We're going to talk about willpower. Notice willpower is not on the motivation chart. And so if you're using willpower to change, you're actually probably still in contemplation. And we're gonna talk a little bit about why that's not good. All right, let me go back for a minute. Anything you want to add about motivation and your figuring out your why?
Well, my why continues to evolve as I go through this process. At the beginning, I was basically sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was sick on a very regular basis every couple of months, and it would put me down for 3 or 4 days, and then I wouldn't have the energy for another week, and then the cycle would continue. And so mine was I wanted to get healthy enough that I could be active again and enjoy family functions and be around for more than just a few more years, because I really thought I was sick enough and health was poor enough that wasn't going to be an option.
Well, it wasn't just enjoying family functions. It was even willing
to go to family functions. Yes.
And so that why becomes really important, and it often relates to our emotional state with other people. So that's really important. So if you haven't talked to your coach about your why, please get your why really, get it as clear as possible. It will evolve and become even cooler. And you're gonna see like great growth. But get a why under your belt so that you know what you're working for. Okay. All right. So we're gonna talk about the 4 things that get in the way of our dreams. Okay. So this slide is called "Don't Talk Yourself Out of Your Dreams," and I really love the quote on the side here. It says, "The distance between your dreams, sorry, I can't speak tonight, and reality is called action." And I thought that went so good with this concept, right? Because dreams don't include motivation. They include actually this idea of scarcity we're going to talk about. But reality and goals, they include action. So there's going to be 4 we go over. 1 is the ready for change, meaning I really want something different from my life, but not ready to change, meaning I don't actually want to do anything different. I just want this miraculous thing. Most people don't wake up the next day. But if you do wake up the next day, please call us. We want to hear about your miracles. Miracles are super inspiring. But I will also be super depressed because you got the 1 in a million miracle, and I now will definitely probably not get one. So but that's okay, because I'm in action and I don't need a miracle now. I just needed good tools to get there. The second is minimal effort. And we'll talk about why we put in minimal effort. We talked a lot about our fear in our previous webinars, and that fear that keeps you from trying. So sometimes you think you're in action because you are literally, you're one of those really stubborn people. And I love stubborn people. I come from a long line of stubborn people, okay, who are standing by the pool and everyone's like, get in the pool. And you're like, my toe is in the pool. I have accomplished my goal. Okay, that's minimal effort. That doesn't work for this. Okay, so don't focus on that. The third one is expecting perfection. We're going to talk to you perfectionists out there, because if you expect perfection, perfectionists actually have a really hard time with this stage of change because of their expectations for themselves and their fear of letting someone down. And then we're going to go over how to give up the idea of doing the same thing, and assimilation and accommodation and those kinds of things. So we're going to talk about all those things tonight. Let's going to start with our ready for change, but not ready to change. So let's go to that slide. And the quote, let's just look at the quote before we do anything else. I think it's time you showed up. And I mean, and it says I, but it really says, I mean, really showed up. So we're going to pull this slide down and we're going to talk about what this means. One of the things I love about this program when I went to convention was this concept, and it's a common concept in the program, but it's talking about awakening, right? Transforming masterfully comes through the awakening process. So what's the opposite of awakening? It's actually not true sleep, not that like good night's sleep, right? Sleep is good for you. It's a healthy habit. We want you to get sleep. It's called dissociation. And dissociation is the way that the brain turns off things that could be painful, right? And so I now can see back and I look at my life and I think, oh, I was really dissociating a lot of things. I was turning things off in my brain because I didn't want to experience pain. And dissociation can be clinically very significant. I'm not talking about multiple personality disorders. Okay, that's a whole nother webinar. But we're talking about the everyday person who experiences dissociation through turning thoughts and feelings off and can't feel them fully, okay? And so we're going to call that the type of being asleep that is damaging to this action state. When we look at that and we understand what dissociation is and that you're not feeling, right? And if you're wondering, what does that feel like? It feels a lot like, I just watched my seventh episode of something on Netflix and I've eaten all my food and I don't want to move. That's probably your dissociative state because we just get stuck, okay? And so we're going to talk a little bit about dissociation more there. But all of us, when we're going through this process of awakening, and that was really kind of pre-contemplative, has that a lot of dissociation from our pain. we're going to talk about how that does that. So when I mean show up, I mean wake up and be present. It's not the same thing, right? If you've ever answered the phone out of a dead sleep, that is not the same thing as when you are out there and ready to go and talking. I want you to be really awake for your change. And that's why we did 3 steps before this, is you need to be awake and present and not just avoiding pain at this part. Part of the hope and the motivation that we talked about, we got there by addressing the fact that we were afraid. Okay. And dissociation, you see it a lot in people who've experienced severe pain and their brains literally can't process the pain. And I know that when Matt and I were in that place for years where I was overweight, there was a lot that I was dissociating about how I felt about my body, because I didn't feel control over it. So what was the point in thinking about it? And so when I say I need you to show up for yourself, right? Not for me. I don't need you to do it for me. For yourself, I mean, you need to be awake. You need to be fully present in your life. You know, the way you want to feel that first time that you do something really exciting. You don't want to be asleep for those moments in your life. And so action is not a phase. You don't get to sleep through any of these. That puts you back in pre-contemplation, but you don't want to sleep through. Okay. So we're going to talk about 4 things that happen that will help us get out of this state of wanting to change but not wanting to change. One thing you're going to notice if someone is in action is they are substituting alternatives, right? Well, what does that look like? Okay, it looks a lot like this. I used to go buy 2 packages of cookies and keep them in my pantry all the time. Substituting alternatives does not mean I just don't eat the cookies. It means I don't buy the cookies anymore. Okay? What I do now is I buy vegetables. I don't eat a lot of snacks. I mean, maybe if I'm doing something, I might have more cheese sticks. Every once in a while, I'll have a popcorn if I want to watch a movie. But I'm not buying snacks. And that's an alternative behavior. My first behavior was I want to have comfort food around, so I'm going to buy the comfort food. The substituting alternatives comes from that motivation of I know I'm going to be good. I'm positive about it. So I stopped doing that. And you can tell that substituting for Matt and I don't know if we buy anything that we used to buy before. I think everything is pretty much, our cupboard looks nothing like it used to look like.
You still buy eggs.
And yes, we still buy eggs, but everything else, even the type of milk we buy, it's all different. And we're happy about it. That's the other thing, is when you're getting into this part where we move past action to maintenance, you'll find that it's not hard. When you've substituted the alternatives successfully and correctly, it's actually, you feel really happy about it. I know if you're still in contemplation and preparation, you're going to grimace a little bit about substituting alternatives, but don't worry. The next part is stop, challenge, choose. This is a cognitive process where I'm going to, because I'm awake, I'm going to realize when I'm doing something that's not leading me towards my goal, right? I'm going to stop myself and say, why am I doing this? What need does this meet? And so I was looking at a meme that my mom posted about someone trying to find answers at the bottom of the cookies, and they had eaten 27 cookies and not found any answers, right? You're going to stop. Before you eat the cookies, you're going to say, will the cookies bring me the answer to the questions I want? I'm going to tell you that the most likely the answer is no. What you're actually looking for the cookies is comfort and some kind of euphoria, brain chemical thing that may or may not take 27 cookies to start to feel. But choose something else. What else can make me feel good? And if something else can make me feel good, I'm going to choose that. So there's that process of now I'm actually stopping, challenging, and choosing. And this is part of the way we get to those alternative behaviors. That's why there are little arrows up there. Okay, so then we're going to have a mindset shift, right? I am no longer thinking about how to keep the old behaviors. A good example was, so Matt and I are planning a vacation. Actually, we'll talk about my birthday party. So I turned 40 in August. And I came to Matt and we were on program, and I said, I really want cake for my birthday, Matt. You need to buy me Maggleby's chocolate cake, which is really good cake. Okay. I didn't get no one paid me to say that. It just really is good chocolate cake. Okay. But, so Matt said, are you sure? And I said, yes. And Matt spent probably $40 on a sheet cake for my birthday because he threw me a party. He's a really good husband. And you know what happened? Because he did that 3 to 4 weeks before my birthday, he ordered that on the night of my birthday. I didn't want cake and I didn't eat any. And I didn't like, oh, I'm not going to eat anything because I'm going to be really good. Because I had already decided that if I wanted cake, I was going to eat it. But I actually didn't want cake, right? Things change. Like our taste buds are actually different. Matt actually eats vegetables, right? Even after I was sure that that would never happen. What's an example of your mindset shift that you've noticed, Matt?
I've noticed my mindset shift, especially when it comes to food and my stress level. And I didn't realize that as my stress level went up, my sugar, candy, soda, all of those consumptions went up as well. And so it was a couple weeks ago, now having been doing our program for almost 8 months, that I realized that I was at a pretty stressed level at work. But I didn't have the need to go raid the pantry or go to the break room at work. And so that was a huge shift for me to then also realize that, for one, that was what I was doing, but then to also realize I didn't need that anymore.
Yeah, and so you're going to find that in action, your mindset is going to shift. One of the reasons it's important to work with a coach in this stage, right? This is a big part of the reason people come to therapy is because they need to work through. Doing that on your own is really, really hard. And most people will, because our brains are focused to go back to what's comfortable and back to the sleep state, if we aren't continuing to work on our personal development, they'll actually go back to your old habits. And this is why having a coach, having a community, having an education system is different. When I was reading in the Habits of Health book, right? So I've been on the program. I'm really committed to what we're doing because I know it works. And yet I was looking in the book and reading about weight loss. I was just reading about the science of weight loss and what it takes and why you can't just exercise your way out of weight. And I read something that said, I'm going to get this right, to lose 30 pounds in a year, you need to do 40 marathons, not 30 marathons, right? It's not one marathon for every pound. It's 40 marathons to get through that. And I thought, that's never going to happen. When we were at our largest, so when I was over 400 pounds, I was never, ever going to do that many marathons. So that was an impossible. Let alone one, right? The 5K, maybe once a year I could walk a 5K if I was, I don't know, if I was crazy that day, which would have been my only mindset.
And then you would have stayed in bed the next day.
Yeah, and then I would have been pain. Okay, but you can't do it that way. So a lot of people are like, oh, I know how to do this. I used to do it this way. I once lost 40 pounds that way. You did. You also gained 40 pounds, maybe 50 back. Yo-yo dieting attitudes, this is one of the things that a lot of our yo-yo dieters will come in and they'll say, oh, I know how to do this. I don't need your coaching. I don't need your community. I don't need your education. I know how to do this. I just want, the feelings. And I'm going to say you don't know how to do it because you have not yet done it successfully. And I'm saying that as somebody who wants to see you succeed. Okay. And so that leads us to our fourth step is seeking and accepting feedback. Okay. People who are in action, people who are in action are actively seeking feedback. Again, this is something that as a therapist, my job is to give feedback, right? Is this working? So what I do is the clients come in and generally they come in and vent what's going on in your life. And it's not always bad venting. They're just telling me about their life. And then I'm starting to take that, and this goes back to the structural tension that we talked about last week, and comparing it to what's your goal. Okay. Well, if my goal is to not, yell and scream at people, right? And I just yelled and screamed at somebody, how did that work? And what can we do to get you the feedback? So, hey, next time that you're really frustrated with something, here's some alternatives. But you need the structural tension and the education and the coaching and the community to do all that, or you'll just go back. And we'll be really honest about that. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, all you have to do is eat different. Also not true. You can eat different. If you don't change your mind, you won't change. Because things don't start and they don't end with what we put in our mouth. They start and end with what we do with what's in our head. And that's why this slide is about being awake and aware of what's going on inside your head. Nobody pays me to watch them have arguments. Well, some people come in and have arguments, but nobody pays me to do that. They pay me to come in and tell me about their argument as a therapist and ask me how to be better. That's the process of feedback. What does a coach get paid for? To watch somebody? Yes, he does watch them, but then he gives them feedbacks and he tells them to practice that skill again and again and again, because on game day, the coach can't go out there. You have to know how to do it. And so this process of feedback is so vitally important, right? And let me tell you, feedback is not the same thing as friendship. Friendship is great and super important. So please don't those are important. That's part of your social support network that you need to change. Feedback from a coach looks like this. I see that you're doing something that's getting in your way. I want to point it out because I want you to be successful and get out of your own way. Right? And it may sometimes, don't ever be harsh or brutally anything or blunt, but you need to be honest, okay, when getting and receiving feedback. And if you don't have someone in your life that's giving you good feedback and you're not seeking feedback from somebody, you are not in action. You are still in preparation. Action means I am actively interacting with my coach at least once a week. Okay. And those people who are in action know that's a game changer. And the feedback is something when you're in action, you want. Matt, can you talk a little bit about your experience with feedback and maybe where your mindset has changed with the feedback component?
Feedback for me has been really important because I tend to be a perfectionist at most things and want it done my way. Or especially with my career and with my employees, if it's not done my way, I don't tend to react in a positive manner with that. So giving feedback and getting feedback has been a really big shift for me over this last period of time, to realize ways that I am stuck in my own head and I'm stuck in my own ways. And without getting that feedback, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am today. With my health or with my career or anything like that. So that changing the mindset to be open and to be honest with yourself and to allow other people to be open and honest with you is such a huge important part of this.
It is, and it will improve more than just your health journey. Feedback in all areas of your life. I know that one of the things Matt and I are very grateful for is the opportunity for feedback in our marriage. One of the comments Matt said to me the first year, and this was valid because he didn't always get good feedback. He said, whenever I would say anything, right, I would use my spidey senses of therapy and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking is going on with you. You would say, what did you say?
You don't know anything.
You know nothing.
You know nothing.
Yes. And I thought, I can't really be that dumb. I actually, people pay me for my, and I don't mean to be bad, but I'm really good at my job. And I know women aren't supposed to say that, but I'm really good at my job. And so I would say things to my husband and he'd say, you know nothing. And I would be like, what? And I realized what Matt was saying. And this is part of some of you with feedback, that when you hear feedback and you know it's valid, you say, you know nothing because that scares you. But now Matt doesn't get scared by feedback and it has helped us a lot. And he actually is really good at giving feedback to me, which was something he didn't know how to do because it's a two-way street. When you start receiving feedback, you're able to give it in a better way. So that's a really important way of showing up for yourself, right? Don't do this in a closet. Nobody knows. Nothing's going on. Do it openly with somebody who's willing to coach you in your community. Okay, we're going to go back to the slides for a minute and go to the next one, which I believe is our friends, the perfectionists. No, it's about developing healthy habits. Okay. So, this is a little bit about perfectionism. Okay, so we're going to talk about the idea of micro and macro habits. And this is really important when you're looking at change. So I want you to look at the green arrow. The green arrow is your macro habit. That's your big goal, right? So if my big goal is I want to lose another 100 pounds, right? And I just focus on that goal is going to be really hard because I'm not going to feel the success very quickly. It's going to take me a little while to get there, right? I want you to look over at the orange, yellow, whatever color you're seeing right now, little arrows. Those are the micro habits. Those are the little things we can't always be successful at. And they're minimal effort, minimal motivation, okay? And that they build up and do this. So we're going to pull down the slide and we're going to talk to you about why this is important. Some of you are like, nope, I'm just going to go run the 40 marathons, Jen. And I'm going to say, here's the problem with you just focusing on your macro habits. And that is that you will experience failure. And you're like, well, you told me failure is okay. I did. I told you that. I'm going to own it. But I did not say set yourself up for failure. One of the things I'm constantly saying as I work with, teenagers who are scared of their shadow most of the time because they're so unsure of who they are, we need to set them up and teach them how to succeed. So the micro habit is the process of teaching you how to succeed, right? The macro habit is what success looks like. And too many of us just look at what success looks like and we compare. And I don't like that. Most comparison is not okay, right? But I want you to look at this. So what happened? I'm gonna give you a good example. Okay, so I talked to somebody and they got their life book, which is a great book to go through the stages of change and help you break things down into micro habits. And they said, what should I do with it? And he said, okay, this is what I want you to do. Are you ready? I want you to open the book and then close the book. And they said, what? And I said, yeah, open the book and close the book. And they said, that's all? And I said, yeah, that is all I want you to do. That is your goal. And they didn't understand it. And I think a lot of people don't. And here's why, okay? When you set your goal too big, and too much, and you're going to fail, your brain hears that. And it's like Pavlov's dog, and you heard the bell and there was no reward. And you stop responding. But if every time I do something, every time I open the book, my brain says, I did it. You guys all know that feeling. The I did it feeling is such a good feeling. You want to talk about something to seek after and to crave, that I did it feeling? Crave that, okay? And break things down so much so that you can be like the 2-year-old who not even tied a shoe, who put his underwear on backwards, okay? You said put his underwear on, he put it on backwards, and you know what the kid said? I did it! Look, I did it, Mom! And he's so proud of himself. You know what he wants to do? He wants to dress himself the next day. Now, he needs feedback, okay? It's fine, on which way the underwear goes and all that other stuff and all the different steps and how you have to wear pants. And there's a lot of feedback to that process, okay? But he's in action because he has done micro steps. I want you to have the I did it feeling. So when you're like, what is a micro habit? It is whatever you do that gets you that I did it feeling, okay? So if you feel like a 2-year-old and you just conquered the world by opening and closing the book, we have successfully taught you how to start changing your habits. Right? If you're like, I opened the book and I read 30 pages 2 days ago, but I just haven't had time. You're right. You probably have not yet learned to schedule out time for that reading. And so you've set yourself up for failure. So you looked at the book and you said, I don't have time for 30 pages. I'm going to fail. And your brain said, then don't try. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm not going to try. Right? And that's what happened. So I want you to realize that the micro habits is how we change. Right? We don't change through willpower. A lot of you think, oh, I will just muscle through and grin and bear it and I will get through. No, you don't just put a goal on the picture of, I want to look like this model. That is not how habits change. That is called willpower, and it will fail you because you will run out of the ability to be successful. Whether you hit the goal and then stop, or you don't hit the goal at all, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So please, that goal, if you've reached unrealistic goals, do that. Now, if you have a vision board and you have micro habits of how I'm getting there, that's okay, right? You can have the goal. But if all you're doing is sticking a picture of some skinny person on the fridge, stop. Get a coach. Get the Habits of Health system and be successful. Get the I did it feeling, not the, oh my gosh, I hate myself feeling. And you all know what I'm talking about if you have something taped to your fridge like that, okay? But you need to be working on that. So I want you to think about that. This is a big part of being the awakened person, right? Dissociative people sit in corners and they dream about things. And they say, I just want to be skinny. I just want to be skinny. Hey, can you pick me up a hamburger on your way home? I just want to be skinny. No. Micro habits, okay? Learn about them. Talk to your coach. Okay, next. We are going to talk about, significant results. Okay, this is the other thing I want to remind you about is that I've told you, and I would be really honest with anyone that asks me, if I was to work as hard as I'm working, and I only lost 2 pounds every month, which used to happen when I would try and eat a little healthier, I would be done. There's no way. And I would be the same weight or more because I am motivated by success. And guess what? So are you. And so you don't need just tools that are like, oh, maybe in 40 years I'll get there, right? Most of you have a mortgage. If you have a mortgage, you know that even that is not motivating to you. When you get to like the last 5 years, you're motivated, right? Because you can start to see it. You need significant results, right? And that means significant in the way they make you feel and how much change you're seeing and how quickly those things are happening, right? It doesn't have to be the same, right? I'm not saying I have to have the same results. Matt has lost almost twice as much weight as I have, and that's okay because for him, that's his goal. But I'm still seeing significant results for me, and that's enough. So make sure that you're doing that. And I don't know if I said this 45 times yet, but please talk to your coach and educate yourself on how to do the micro habits. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about minimal effort mind shift. Okay. So we're going to look at this quote first. When you focus on a problem, what do you have? You have more problems, right? Anyone who is stuck is focusing on how stuck they are, or they're dissociating from how stuck they are, which is just a step beyond that, right? Where I have problems, but I'm not even willing to look at them. When you focus on possibilities, you have more opportunities, okay? We're going to talk about the abundance and the scarcity mindset, okay? Abundance is the belief that all the effort I invest in my change will be multiplied, okay? The scarcity mindset is there's not enough success to make it worth it. This is the scared. This is what we've been working on with the contemplation and the preparation is this fear of failure. Okay, and so I'm going to give you a real life example of how this mind shift has happened in our life. Okay, so most of you know, if you've watched the other ones, that Matt and I, one of my whys we talked about earlier is infertility, right? I literally Googled, what does infertility look like? And there's a bunch of women crying, okay? And there are words on there like, I don't ever know if it's going to happen. And I've been there. I have cried over this, okay? But that belief that someone else is having my baby or I'm never going to have what I want, that is a scarcity mindset. There is not enough, right? If you look at me and say, I wanted to lose 100 pounds, but Jennifer Oxford lost it first and she lost my 100 pounds, you're in scarcity, right? Or I'm too old, right? I could only lose that when I was 20, you're in scarcity. There's all kinds of ways, but if you're finding all these reasons not to, I am going to say that you are probably in scarcity. Good thing you got a coach, right? You're going to go to your coach and you're going to talk to them about your scarcity. The other picture that was on the slide was of a family with 3 kids. Matt's going to pull that up for a minute because I want you to look at this and I'm going to talk to you for a minute. This is my dream, you guys. I want 3 kids. Yes, I am 40 years old and I'm not done with my health journey and I'm not currently pregnant and I want 3 kids. But I believe in abundance and I feel like this is possible. And I don't know all the avenues in which it's possible, but I have no doubt that this is possible. Can you tell the difference in those feelings, right? I like the shadow because we don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to happen. And I believe in it, not because I'm crazy or I'm looking for a miracle, because I'm taking the necessary steps to make that happen. And so scarcity, abundance, if you're dealing with this, is really going to mess with you. So I want you to focus on how can you be, this goes back to the micro habits, but how can you be successful and find success? Do not just sit around thinking I was single until I was 34, thinking somebody else has married my husband. That's not what happens, okay? People are not taking your dreams. You are just not to your dreams yet. And if you give up because you think, oh, Susie down the street took my dreams, then you've given up because you're in scarcity, versus I know that I'm gonna find the thing that I need in my life. And so focus on that. When you're in action, there are days you're gonna hit your limit. You're pushing yourself. I'm really proud of you for pushing yourself. Pushing yourself in scarcity will feel very different than pushing yourself in abundance. Okay. All right. Oh, these are my perfectionists. Okay. So experiencing perfection, right? I want you to look at the title of the graphic. It says emotional conflict. I promise you, if you are expecting perfection, you are going to be in emotional conflict. You may still be in some of those early stages of change, and a lot of what we talked about was intense emotional conflict. But before we go over the graphic, I want you to look at the quote. Change happens when pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And this actually quote was brought up to me around the time I had my weight loss surgery. It was something that was said to me, and I don't even know if it was about the weight loss surgery, but that's how long I've known about this quote, is that we change when it's painful. Okay. So intense emotional conflict. Okay. Let's talk about what that is. That is the feeling that I can't. It is fear. It is pain. It's dissociation. That's a sign you're in intense emotional conflict, is that you've dissociated. I used to say I was fat and happy. That was dissociation. What I was saying was, I don't feel like I can be healthy, so I'm going to dissociate from the pain and call it happy because I think I've reached the pinnacle of happiness. And I understand you if you're there, and I honor where you're at, but I'm telling you that emotional conflict is why you still want to know how to change. You're still listening to crazy people tell you to pay, I think I paid $12,000 or $15,000. I can't even remember. I've dissociated the amount. That was intense emotional conflict. I dissociated the amount that it took.
12 years ago. So.
Right. But the concept is that I was willing to take that action and invest because I was wanting to be out of conflict. Okay. But the next thing is, when you get into action, you need to be doing the right actions. And if you are in the right action, what will happen is that your pain will dissipate. It will start to go away and you will feel better. And this is when we talk about less emotional conflict, and we're talking about moving into maintenance, which is our topic for next week. But that intense emotional conflict, action less emotional conflict, means I'm in pain. I'm going to do something, the correct thing about it, because I'm going to see success and significant improvement, and I'm being less pain. And then I'm going to be super motivated and be like, this rocks. And you'll be like Matt and I were, where we're like, we just want everyone to know about how to get out of that level of pain that we were in. Okay. And then eventually, when you're in maintenance, you'll take less and like mental and emotional action to stay in maintenance. Okay. So that, for you perfectionists out there, you are in pain. That's what perfectionist means. It means that at some point in your life, you can pull it down for, at some point in your life, somebody told you that if you weren't perfect, and they maybe didn't say it with words, but that you're not lovable. That was bullcrap. Okay, those are really strong words for me, by the way. But you are lovable, even if you're not perfect. Right? And so some of us have that debilitating belief that we have to be something for someone else, or that we have to be perfect to be lovable. That's a lie. And I know it's really hard when that lie's been around for a super long time. Right? And I'm not talking as somebody who's just a therapist. I'm talking about somebody who faced a lie for 30 years. Okay? And I still sometimes, I'm not hopeless, but I still have a hard time believing. Like when people are like, oh my gosh, you've lost how much? And they say it back to me. It sometimes brings me to tears, because I was in that much pain and never believed the lie. I believed the lie that I couldn't get through it. And so if your lie is, I'm not lovable if I'm not perfect at this, you are. You are lovable no matter how perfect you are. And not only that, but the success comes from being willing to try. That is a great word, that word try.
And to try again and again and again and keep trying.
And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about as we wrap up. And in 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about what that looks like to try again, because that is part of the process. And if you're not willing to be in the process, you can dissociate in the corner, but you're going to be sad. Because if you're in the corner not doing anything about the things you want to change, you are in pain. And acknowledging your pain is really important, because that was something that I did not want to do. I did not want to acknowledge my pain. But acknowledging my pain has been freeing. And sometimes we just have to name the scary thing in the room. Okay. So again, good thing you have a coach to work on this with. and, you know, a support system. We're all there. If you need to name your pain, go to the people who care about you, name your pain, and you're going to get better. All right. So next. Okay, we're going to talk about doing the same thing, getting the same results, right? We've all heard that there's a definition of insanity. It's not actually a definition of insanity, but it was, I'm like 99% sure I should have looked this up, that Albert Einstein talked about insanity. And he, by the way, was not a psychologist, so this is why it's not true, but he tried the same thing and he had huge breakthroughs. What he's really saying is, I had huge breakthroughs when I was willing to do something different. Okay? So that's what he's telling you, is that he became not just Albert Einstein on the birth certificate, but Albert Einstein that we talk about, and we all know who this is, because he chose to make significant changes in the way he was doing things. So we're going to talk for a minute about massive routine shifts, bringing massive results, right? If you do itty bitty routine shifts, right? If I'm like, okay, I am currently drinking 40 ounces of water, I'm going to go to 48. Okay, go to 48. If that's your micro goal, that's great. If that's your macro goal, we got to talk, okay? Because macro goals should look like massive routine shifts, and the micro goals are how they get there. So your brain, right, works from cues.
And a lot of times they don't seem obtainable to you.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, because, you know, enough of you are loving me right now and saying 40-year-old woman, 3 kids, that's a lot of kids, Jen, you should just shoot for 1, right? I know you are, and that's okay. You love me. You won't say that to me because you would never take away my hope. But I'm shooting for big goals. I am not embarrassed by that. I am shooting for big goals. Sometimes even Matt looks at me and is like, are you sure? And I'm like, oh no, this is the number, right? But that's okay, because there's cues and routines. So we're gonna go back to that. When you have the cue, this is what I'm going to do. When I see, hear, feel something, I have an automatic comfortable response, right? My brain is set up to do that. So for example, when I feel sad, right? If I know there's a way to stop feeling sad, if I successfully stop feeling sad, you know what will happen? I will do that, right? So, and sometimes I do it both ways. Sometimes I'll say, I'm sad, and take down. I'm sad, and I know if I start watching Netflix, I will stop feeling sad, aka I will dissociate from my life and I will stop feeling the pain. Okay, so some of you do that. That's your cue. I feel sad, and so I'm gonna go dissociate through TV or food or other things, okay? Where the opposite is true. So one of the things that Matt is trying to coach me through is how to do more self-care, because, you know, that's something I need to work on. And so when I'm struggling and stressed, you know what Matt says to me? My cue says, sit down and do nothing. And Matt says, Jen, would you go to your craft room? And the days that I listen, okay, and we've moved, so the craft room is still in boxes, but when I've listened to that in the past, what will happen? How many days in a row will I start going to the craft room?
Oh, multiple.
Right, because it works. Because it is way better than vegging out both physically and mentally. Because I get this boost of being creative, because creativity is this awesome boost. So I go and I be creative, and that's what happens. So I change the routine, not the cue, okay? And that's the stop, challenge, choose we talked about earlier. And then what happens is I get this reward, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so good after being creative. And then Matt is like, hey Jen, I haven't seen you for 4 days. Could you come out of the craft room? And I'm like, oh, sorry. Do you want to see all the things I made? And he's like, sure, just come out of the craft room, right? But that's the concept is that we want to get through that, and we're going to have to make massive shifts. There's a massive shift that happens every time I say, I need to go to the craft room and start being creative. But then I have massive results of feeling better, right? And I take care of myself, and that's good. And so massive routine shifts are going to create massive change. And so don't say, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to do this. When I look at my routine and what I want my life to look at in 10 years, I do not want to say, I want it to look exactly the same with 3 kids. No, I want a massive shift.
We couldn't do the same routine with 3 kids.
Right.
Where we were at 8 months ago, 3 kids, if they were even here, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right. Well, yeah. That's, I mean, it's very true. right? But if I want massive results, I'm going to have to make massive shifts. And Matt and I are already starting to talk about what that looks like with our micro goals, right? We're not just saying one day I'm just going to do it different, but with our micro goals, we're saying what are some of those smaller shifts that we need to start making now? And we're trying to work on those. But I want you to look at that, because if you are thinking, well, I can't do the same thing and get different results, don't just do something a little bit different. Do something big different, right? And you're going to figure out, because you've got a community of coaching and education system, you're going to figure out what that is. Okay. So next, we are going to talk a little bit about what the transformation skills are, okay, for the accepting the change process in action. Okay, so there are 3 things I want you to take away when you acknowledge that you're in action. 1 is you want to reward your progress. This includes working on your micro and macro habits and reinforcing positive changes. I want you to find all the ways to feel success that you can feel. If you're like, I'm going to open my book and feel success, I'm going to do that 5 times a day and feel success, then you are on the right path, right? Do not say, oh, I did good yesterday, so I'm going to change my micro goal, right? You got to get to the part where you're really moving forward, and you can work with your support system on that. And then I want you to seek and apply the feedback. Okay? If you are not ready to seek and apply the feedback, please see the first 3 webinars. Okay? Connect to a coach. If I promise you, if you don't have a coach, you are not ready to be in action, right? And coaches can look like a lot of different things, but you need a coach, and you need to engage in an environment. We talked about massive shift, and that looks like an environment. There's whole sections on changing your environment. People do not change in a bubble. You can't just do it by yourself. Change your environment. And then the 3rd, I want you to praise the praiseworthy, okay? I want you to be constantly looking for your wins, and I want you to figure out for you what the 2-year-old I did it feels like for you, and I want you to experience that on a regular basis. Because on the hard days, you need to know, what can I do right now to feel like I did it? You know, for me now, if I get to my water goal, I'm like super excited. Like, I want to text Matt and be like, do you know how many ounces of water I just finished? I don't always text him that, but I want to. I have the I did it feeling. When I pass up a craving, or when I realize this morning at work, there was a cupcake left on the conference room table. And let me just tell you, if at the end of the meeting, previous old past Jen would have eaten the cupcake or taken her own Steve later. But I saw the cupcake, it didn't even look good, and I walked it away. And that was a win. I did it. I have overcome cravings because of that. Okay, and then the last thing I want you to remember with action is express gratitude. Okay, don't just be looking at all the things you don't have in your life. Be looking for all the wins, right? That's one of the things I actually really appreciate in this journey, right? Matt and I have been working on this for 8 months. We are not yet pregnant, but there's a lot of wins, and there's a lot of things we're grateful for. And that gratitude lets me know that there will be more. That is the abundant mindset, okay? And if you're not grateful, you're probably a little bit dissociative, okay? Stop dissociating. Wake up and live your life, okay? And then remember this quote: praise makes you feel good. I want you to do that. But critique, this is the feedback, makes you better, okay? So praise what's going on and get that critique, okay? That healthy critique that goes on. Okay, Matt's gonna help us finish up.
All right, that concludes week 4. We're so glad everybody was able to jump on and be with us this evening. And we hope you will join us again next Tuesday at 8 p.m. For the maintenance portion of this webinar. If you have any questions, please reach out to your coach who invited you to this. There are thousands upon thousands of resources that they have available to help you and to be able to talk with you. And again, we are so grateful for the opportunity to be able to be here this evening, and are hoping we can see you again next week. Just as a reminder, we know you guys can make the changes and do the hard things. This is updated pictures of Jen and I over the last 8 months. You can see some huge numbers between the two of us, in our weight goals that we have focused on. But what you don't see in those pictures are all the other micro goals that we've also been successful at. So be sure to review the last couple of weeks of these webinars if you haven't, or go back and review them again, because you can do hard things, and we believe in you. And we hope we'll see you again next week.
Have a good night.